Hi, everybody. First thing, sound check. Can everybody hear me? The just waiting a little bit on the chat, just checking in. Got my kids are upstairs, just at the top of the stairs behind me, and getting we're all getting set up. And oh, good. All right. So the first thing, audio. Is it my normal voice, or am I in the higher teenage boy timbre? I'm hoping it's normal. I was playing around with things. Hi, Mike. Welcome. I'm just gonna throw this over to a live chat frame, and we should in theory be ready to go. I'm testing out some new things. So some of this early stuff is uh, and we're gonna get going. All right, so normal and cracking. That's well. I mean, it's at least it's there. So whether that's on Nick, whether that's on your end or my end, we'll kind of hopefully figure it out. I seem to be getting a decent frame rate at the moment. Um, so and Dr. Gary Fish. Hi. The in fact. Just as the beginning, I'll mention this before, but Gary Fish is actually the one who kind of got tonight's ball rolling, and so hopefully I get to cover. So the hi Grand Express, hi Michael, Hobby Man, hi 82, Possum Bayou, good to see you. Um, so I'm just doing. I'm gonna do a little quick test to make sure that everybody can see the mini cam. When we go to the camera, got to bring this up. When we go to this frame, I'm actually going to bring it up big screen, and you're not going to see me at all. This is more along the lines of when I'm actually going to be working. But this is actually my workspace, and my camera is right up there. And the camera is. You can see me kind of reach over here. It's just off to my right, so I can actually demonstrate this. And it's actually the camera that I use to film, because I finally got a capture card, and I think we're okay. Good to see you, Rick. And good. All right. So everybody can kind of see that. And as we're just kind of gathering in, we'll take a few more minutes and let some people come in. We're up to about at least according to mine, we're up to about 4. And yes, Green Express. How to use Rust-Oleum camouflage paint to weather 10 cars at once. Well, that's more like weather 10 sets of trucks at once, but you're probably along the right track. So we are going to be doing some of that, and so we're going to see how this goes, because some of tonight is literally going to be watching paint dry, and so I just want to make sure that we kind of get that sort of covered, and we're going to be going with that. So as people are coming in, the other thing is just question. Wow, we got someone from New Zealand. Hi, Mark. Thank you for tuning in. Mark, what time is it there? I'm just curious where and just where people are checking in from. So, you probably hear my son in the background. He is incapable of remaining quiet. And unfortunately, if we try and make him be quiet, he gets louder. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is, as we're gonna it's the next day, and yeah, because it's 6 o'clock. It's 6 in the evening here on Tuesday, the 4th of February. There we go. I have to remind myself what day it is. All right, so I'm just gonna run up the intro sequence, and we're gonna get started. All right, I don't know if that actually made any sound. I don't get I don't get the monitor part of that. So anyway, uh, before we get started, of course, tonight we're going to be talking about how to weather a whole lot of cars at once, and it is one thing that it was Gary Fish mentioned that to me. Although a few people have asked me some questions on how to do it, and one of the challenges with this particular topic is that I have a small layout. I don't have a lot of rolling stock downstairs. So usually when I'm working on my own pieces, I am only doing one to maybe three cars at any given time. Um, and so for those of you who have a lot, you really, the idea of sinking 5 hours, into a single car is probably not even on the list. I mean, even those of you who have small layouts, sinking 5 hours into a single car is probably not the most efficient use of your time, especially when you can be doing all kinds of different things. And there goes Megan. So what I wanted to talk about is I do actually have experience of painting a lot of things in bulk, but not necessarily train cars. And I'm going to try to show how some of those techniques can be used. Part of it's philosophy, and then some of it also has to do with trying to come up with something fairly quick. So very first thing that I'm going to do, I've got a light here that will make this a little bit more visible. The only trouble is it sort of washes my face. Well, actually, it's not too bad. But I've just lit this up a little. I've lit this up a little bit better. And
Hey Dad, I found the train whistle.
you found the train whistle. Bring it over here. Just in case anybody sends a super chat, we've got a train whistle. There we go. Okay, come on, Megan, bring it over. So, all right. So, what I wanted to show first is notice the difference between these two containers. The containers are going to be what I'm actually working on, and you'll notice the one on the bottom and the one on the top. This one was my test piece, and we're actually going to be moving towards just on how we weather something like that. So that's basically the goal tonight. I'm going to show you how I did that. But before we get there, I wanted to talk the I wanted to sorry, daughter emergency. Um, so anyway, we're gonna try and work on that. So anyway, so this is kind of the goal. You can see the before and after, and the thing is for tonight we're actually doing not just one, but we're actually going to be doing a total of five. And just showing how at least the technique that I did for this one and how quick it can work on the five of these. So that's kind of that'll be do that. For those of you, if you're wondering what a super chat is, it's something that with this channel being monetized, I can if you want to tip me you can do what's called a super chat or a super sticker, and basically you can kind of it's effectively giving me a tip. That's sort of how it works, and some people do, and the way the super chat works is that if I can blow this whistle. And of course, the one thing about doing this at 6 o'clock my time is that I have a very, very noisy toddler who is proclaiming that my daughter needs batteries, and so the so we'll go from there. Just give me a second. This one I need to deal with.
Need batteries for the remote. Some remote.
This is the remote. There is the remote. There's a remote. Okay, then pull the batteries out of one of these. Okay, don't care which one. All right, Possum Bayou, thank you. That is what a super a super sticker, I think they're called. But so again, thank you very 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 much. So yes, Rick, there is heavy editing amongst what I do. I mean, normally film a lot of my stuff downstairs, but there's constant interruptions. Some of the videos that I have little hands kind of showing up in where my hobby table is downstairs and everything else. So anyway, let's get started. Okay. Not a problem, Mike. Thank you very much. So anyway, I'm just gonna move back to the frame here. So the idea is weathering bulk. I'm just gonna do five of these containers, hopefully to be weathered up like this. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that when we actually do things like that, of some of the philosophies behind doing a lot of weathering. Welcome Joe, and welcome everybody who's now in. I think, at least according to my info, we are currently at 24 viewers. So again, thank you very very much. And again, I have the train whistle, and if there are any super chats or super stickers that come up, so thank you very much again to Possum Bayou for providing that. So as some of you may or may not know, I come to model railroading I've come back to model railroading through a rather circular route that has taken me through science fiction, fantasy, war games, military modeling, all these kinds of things. And one of the things that I can actually share is that when working with when you're painting an army, for example, a tabletop strategy game army. The game that I played was called Warhammer 40,000, and I still have all the miniatures. And you're painting, in some respects, lots and lots and lots of figures. And so the philosophies behind what I'm about to show you can be applied to model railroading when weathering in bulk. And so for example, most of the stuff that you've seen on my channel in terms of weathering, these are the really detailed showpiece models. That's kind of the approach that I've been taking it, but you don't have to do that for everything. So, for example, if I'm painting an army, I'm just going to put these out here. These are Warhammer 40,000 orcs, and I'm just going to move it up to the just up to the big screen, and I can actually hold them right up to the camera. Hopefully it can focus on that. These are kind of grunt soldiers that I've painted. And the idea is that you have lots of these, like groups of 30 of them. And then among them, they also have some sort of like specialists, like this guy right here. And and then but you see, you got to come up with ways. Like if you're painting a lot of this, you're and trying to do a lot of detail on miniatures like this, you're gonna just want to poke your eyes out because these kind of miniatures, there's a lot of them, and if you don't develop a way to paint a lot of them quickly, then it's gonna take forever. I mean, part of Games Workshop's entire thing most recently is developing ways to actually do a lot of painting very 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 quickly, and they used something called contrast paints, which I did actually demonstrate a little while back. That was actually what determined that I needed a better camera unit or something better so I can actually show it to you. So with these, you have your kind of rank and file, but in that you also have more your semi-center your focal models inside of a given unit, and these guys are a little bit bigger. They've got some more detail. On them. You spend a little bit more time working on them, and then in the middle of all that, you also have the centerpieces. And so this one is one very, very big orc. And he's got lots and lots and lots of detail, and he takes a lot of time to paint. And so just going to bring him right up to the camera. Hopefully it'll focus on him there. There we go. And so you can see the kind of detail in there. So, Sparky, I don't think you broke the chat. But anyway, so the idea is with this, like when you're painting an army. When you're painting an army like this, you're spending a lot of time. You want to make sure that you're spending the time painting the stuff that needs to be painted. The stuff in the background or the rank and file stuff, you don't need to spend a lot of time on, whereas you want to really spend a lot of time on your centerpieces. Now, I have to all credit due where it belongs is to the Mudfather himself, to Ralph Renzetti. He employs this kind of philosophy when doing weathering. The idea is that if you're looking at a long train, generally what you're doing is you're looking at the front where the locomotives are, probably somewhere in the middle. You're kind of paying attention to it, and then you're paying attention to the end, and everything sort of in between doesn't necessarily need to have the same kind of detail. If you've ever done kind of stage work or anything else like that, you want to make sure that you're actually spending time letting people focus on what needs to be focused. But at the same time, ironically, particularly when it comes to model railroading, if you weather something really well and then the rest of it looks like plastic, people are going to notice the plastic. And in fact, what you want to do is get people to look at your showpieces. And you do that by doing some fairly subtle things and quick ways of weathering. So we're going to get started. As we get started, do we have any questions that you might have at this point? There's a number of different ways to do this, and one thing, of course, a general rule when it comes to doing bulk weathering. If you want to do a lot of cars very quickly, the first thing you want to do is you want to kill the plastic shine. And if you do nothing else, just take a can of Tester's Dull Coat, specifically, and basically spray down the cars, and that will kill the plastic shine. But what I'm proposing here is a way to get it to look slightly better than that. I mean, the philosophy is still the same, but the idea is a way to do something quickly. All right, so I'm going to just bring up my my painting tray. Like we are actually gonna do some painting here, and what I've already done prior to doing this is I sprayed all of these down just with a can of it's a satin varnish, Games Workshop's Munitorium varnish. It used to be called Purity Seal, but it's basically the same kind of thing. That it's a semi like it is a kind of a satin look, and so 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 the reason that I've done that is because the step that I'm going to be doing next requires some degree of actually setting up for this. Now, the only thing is what I'm going to be doing, and this particular one is this color here. This is my favorite weathering color of all time. It's Abteilung 502's Starship Filth, and the Ammo by Mig also has it as part of their Starship Colors set as well, and it's the one right in the middle there. But it comes in both tube and oil brusher. In this case, I'm going to be using it out of the tube. I do actually have links for this one. If you can't find it locally, I do actually have a link for it, the tube itself. It should be below, I think, or it will be by the time that this is over. So if that's something that you want to check out. One of the reasons why I like Starship Filth is because it's a gray, but it's got a hint of brown to it. So what I'm going to do here is a very basic wash using oil paints, but there's a couple of tricks in how I apply it. So first off, I'm just taking a little bit of my white spirit thinner. I use something called Taltine, which is I'm using something called Taltine, which is made by a company called Demco, and I'm not sure, this may just be a Canadian company, but what I like, its consistency is what I like to work with, and so it does work well with what I'm trying to do. Now you'll notice that I've put thinner in three spots. And the reason that I tend to do that is I like to have something that I can kind of clean my brushes in and then put fresh thinner on. But the reason that I have the third one is this is actually where I'm going to be putting the actual pigment. So I just have a little sculpting tool here, and you don't need that much. You just kind of scoop a little bit off the end here, and this is just creating a. I'm about to create a wash using some of this oil paint. Just want to make sure that I get this all covered. I also have a bit of paper towel handy, but all I'm doing is I'm just putting this right into the well, and I'm just mixing it around, and I've got to make sure that I get all of it off, and not sort of sticking on the edges. It needs to be actually in there. And the trouble is, I'm actually doing this at kind of arm's reach, so this isn't like right below my point of view. So I'm just kind of mixing this up, and we'll kind of see how this goes. Trying to get as much of this pigment into here, and now I'll be stirring it up a little bit more, but I want to make sure that I get that in place. And so I've got a couple of brushes that I'm using here. So I'm using one to apply, and then eventually I'm using a couple to kind of smooth it out. But these brushes will come in a little bit later. But then I've also got another brush here to uh, that I can also use. So before I actually do this, what I'm going to do, just to make sure that the it goes where it is, I'm just taking the straight up thinner and just lightly brushing it over the model. So yeah, actually, John Arthur, and I just to try and catch up on some of the chat while I'm doing this. Actually, I've got to move my chair up if I'm actually going to, so that you're actually going to have a chance to actually see what I'm doing here. Is I'm just applying the thinner to the outside of the car. It doesn't have to like. Potentially, I could even use a larger brush, but I'm just trying to cover as much of this as possible, just by applying the thinner. And you just want it so it's kind of going over the whole thing. I really should be using gloves here because I'm getting it all over my fingers, but things that you kind of remember to do part way through. And so, especially on something like this. Oh, don't worry about being late, Rick. I'm just you've kind of got me on just as the starting the technique. So all I'm doing here is just applying the thinner straight up. So it just kind of flows everywhere that it needs to be. And this doesn't have to be anything special, really. It just has to be. You have to just kind of get some of it on. Here, do my fingers and just bring some of these back here. They've all kind of been coated, but now this is where the magic actually happens. Is that I've created this wash, and it's really simple. I just tried this, and you just kind of brush it across. Now that looks a little thick for my taste, so I'm actually going to apply just a little bit more thinner across the front. But you can really see the detail, the detail pop on that, and you just flows in nicely. Doing just a light brush on the top. Now, because this is oils, this isn't the only thing that I'm doing, by the way. So, all right. So there's one. And you can see just because I pre-applied some of the thinner, you can actually just see it kind of flow right into place. Actually, this one went by really quickly. Okay. Now, pay attention to what I'm doing here, and see if anybody notices exactly what I am doing. So, okay. Now this one's a lot smoother around the edges, so just pulling in a little bit of just straight up thinner. And there we go. Yeah, Brandon. Yes, I am the one. I am the one doing the talking. So, as you can see, I'm just applying that there. This one, the underside on this one isn't as critical, but I am going to put a little bit there, and you can just see it flow right there. The light reflects a little bit much, but hopefully the camera kind of catches it. And then one last one. So I don't know if anybody's actually running a timer on this. I probably should have, but you can see how this kind of goes. Now, the thing is, this is quite a bit different from what I call a pin wash. This is an actual general wash. Some of you may, if you've ever done the, heard of the method of actually taking isopropyl alcohol and of taking isopropyl alcohol and mixing it with some black ink. The principle here is the same, but it is a little bit different. Now, has anybody noticed the way that I actually put these containers down? Because this is actually part of the trick. Did you notice that I put all of the containers, when I put them down, I put them upside down? So, so you heard alcohol and you logged in, Michael. Okay, so here I'm actually bringing a cooking drying rack, and I'm actually, the reason that I'm doing this is I want this to get a chance to dry, and I'm actually putting these upside down. Here, and I'm just going to take my little tray and actually just set it aside while the rest of this happens, because I will need it, but I just need to leave it for a little bit. Okay, so that's step one, and what I'm doing at the moment is just letting this dry, and because you're working with oils, you do need to actually let it sit and dry for a little bit of time, and so we that's sort of the next part of it. So yes, again, thank you very much for checking in, and at this point in time, I want to talk a little bit about more techniques that you've used while we wait for the paint to dry a little bit, and so that's up next, because this is not the way that we do this is like it still requires more than one step to kind of get the look that you're looking for, but we've been at this now for half an hour. By the time that I actually started actually applying brush to model, it's been less than 10 minutes. So okay, so on how to wet, so Grain Express, you're looking at different ways of weathering tires. I'm one who tends to like, for those of you who've watched most of my videos, you'll find very few of my videos actually involve weathering pigments. I actually will be using on the switch list, who's in chat, Rick Stonking, he sent me a steam locomotive, and his steam locomotive will actually have the first will be one of the few times that you actually see me use weathering pigments on a model. So weathering tires is, first off, tires tend to turn a little bit gray, and probably on something like that, an oil-based gray dry brush probably would actually work quite well. I mean, if you want, you can just email me afterwards, and I can chat to you about that and go with that. So oh, Dustin, don't worry about being late to the party. I mean, we've got a chance. We've had our first super chat or super sticker. I think we've had different kinds of things come through, and at the moment we are literally watching paint dry. Down here, you'll notice I've got a cook. This is a cooking rack that will have to go in the dishwasher after I'm done here. But specifically, after I did all of the wash, notice that I've got them sitting upside down. that is very, very, very deliberate, and I'm just kind of keeping an eye on the time because these are oil paints that they take a longer time to dry, and I'm using that to our advantage. Oh, Brandon, thank you very much for the thank you very much for the super chat. Where's my whistle? I thing is, I don't have a wig in the house, and if you ever want to see me wear a kilt, we don't actually like my kids do Highland dance. There's not a kilt in the house that will actually successfully fit me, and I'm not sure if you want to see that. So I have a wooden train whistle. So again, thank you. All right. So, but now, Brandon, since we have a little bit of time, what kind of airbrush did you get? Yes, I do not have a wig in the house, or at least I'm not aware of any wigs in the house. Um, so, but the but yeah. So, Super Bowl halftime show. Yes, Ron Marsh is very happy right now. Um, Super Bowl is a thing up here in Canada, but of course, we have our own football league. But they finished like back, uh, like they tend to go earlier in the year, and they tend to finish usually in November, and so for those who really enjoy football, I think the Super Bowl was a lot of fun, and it was and that comeback was really neat. So yeah, again, I guess kudos to Ron Marsh, because the team that he was cheering for this year finally got it. So, but I don't know if there were any 49ers fans out there or not. So what I'm going to do now is just I've been letting this sit intentionally upside down, and we've been kind of chatting for not quite 10 minutes. But I'm actually going to take it, and I'm now going to turn this all back right side up. And the reason that I'm doing that is because it's still slightly wet, and I actually want some of the pigment to now start flowing down. And but you can see that because it's been sitting upside down, some of the pigment there has been kind of collecting, and it looks kind of yucky and not not necessarily the best. But this has not taken me very, very long. You could do this with the same drag of cars. Um, so I mean, the goal is to kind of get it so it kind of looks passable. Um, the Yep, certainly to each their own, and but again, we can go from there. So now I just want to make sure that I'm catching all the chats, and so Brandon, so master compressor, Iwata Neo, and it's a great brush to start with. I think, and frankly, that one could last you quite a while. I mean, the first airbrush I bought was my Grex XG, and I've had it now for 12 years, and it's still working just fine. I keep looking at the newer versions of it, and I thought, kind of thinking, oh, should I upgrade? But if you invest well in an airbrush and take care of it, it will last you a very long time. So anyway, as I'm continuing to let this dry, I just want to kind of go over in chat. So, does anybody have any questions about the process that I've have so far? I mean, just to go back for those of you who didn't see it at the beginning, is that I created a wash using the odorless mineral spirits and Starship Filth oil paint from, and this is Abtalung 502, but Ammo by Meg makes an oil brusher with the same color in it, so you can potentially get them from Get them from either company. And so with this, you just take a little bit of this paint and then in a well. Now, if you're doing a whole lot of cars, you can use, and especially if you're doing HO, you can use bigger brushes because you don't have to be shy about slopping this stuff on. It will get messy. That's the only thing about doing this kind of thing is it is a messy process. Um, John, you're asking, with the thinner going on first, is the satin coat all that necessary? One of the reasons why I do a coat is to kind of protect the decals just in case the thinner is going to attack the original paint. It's more a cautionary thing more than anything else. And Mike, odorless mineral spirits you can buy at any art store. I mean, I picked this up at there's an art supply store in town. Michael's is a chain that is present in both Canada and the U.S., I believe. We don't have Hobby Lobby up here, so it's possible that they might. But if you go into the oil paint section specifically and look for thinners, there are various types that are odorless. The only thing that you don't want is you want to make sure you get one that's like clear, like this. There are some types of thinners intended for oils that have kind of a yellowy tone for it. I find just to peace of mind, just work with ones that are completely clear. Um, so now, Will, when you're asking about a tone or a wash, like, are you talking? There's a type of product that military modelers there's a variety of paint the military modelers use. They're called filters. And I wasn't going to necessarily cover filters precisely because they're actually a little bit different than a wash, even though they have a similar consistency. Is that what you meant, Will? Or uh, uh, I mean, I'm specifically using an oil wash here, and one of the reasons why I'm using Starship Filth is because it's a gray, and if you spread it thin, there's a bit of a brownish tinge to it, and that's why it is so good for this kind of thing. I mean, you can use other oil paints. I mean, if you're one thing that I don't have time to do tonight is how to do quick fading, but you can do something similar to this and do it. So. Okay, so and yeah, this is a good time for Q&A because this is it's almost ready for me to work on, but uh, yeah, Rick, in terms of the different types of thinners, and yes, they do vary from country to country. As I said, Taltine, as this is labeled, I mean, there's the label there, is available in Canada from a company called Demco. Now, I don't know if this is available in the States or not. I just happened to luck out, found the stuff, and it works really really well. Um, and so, oh, Dave, I'm sorry that the internet's acting up. I mean, I'm still getting green here, so the replay should be okay. And Yeah, and then you can get it. I mean, generally, my suggestion is go check out the art stores. I mean, yes, you can get odorless thinners, I think, at Home Depot, but they usually come in much larger cans and the like. And I just find it easier. Like you saw, for those of you who were here earlier, you saw how I just basically poured some of this right into the cup or right into the cap, and then just dumped it into the well. Um, so that kind of gave me that sort of opportunity there. Anyway, let's just switch back to the blue and notice how. Let's be honest. That looks terrible. That really doesn't look all that good. Um, so what we're trying to do here is now we're actually trying to make this look less brushy, to make it look a little bit better. And part of that is actually moving to a removal stage. And so I have Just a paper towel here. Depending upon the size of the car that you're working with, you might want to use like a J cloth or something. But you can just basically just oops. Of course, I did that off camera. That you can just basically lightly the just brush you can just lightly wipe some of the more excessive ones like this. You can just wipe that right. You can wipe most of it off, and it still leaves a lot of the pigment still in the cracks. But that doesn't do anything at least for the sides. And I am going to try, but it may be a little too early to show this next part. But this is actually where, in theory, this is where the magic actually happens. Is if you notice, like you also notice that the reason that I had it upside down to begin with, and then turned it over, is because I wanted the pigment to kind of collect up in the top areas here, and then when you turn it over, have whatever remaining fluid move down into the bottom, so you get an even distribution. That's the why you apply it one side and then let it sit for a few minutes, and then flip it over. And the other thing is, like, this is a completely dry brush. And so with a combination of using paper towels and others, now what you're doing is kind of removing, almost buffing some of this out, so that you get rid of what are called tide marks. And and in this case, you just take it and you just do some downward strokes. This probably still needs to sit for a little while longer. Just in the way, like, my preference would be to leave it for a little bit longer, but you're just drawing the pigment down, and you're basically watching out for things that just don't look quite as realistic, and you just gently come over with the brush. Now, yeah, I still probably need to leave that for a little bit longer. And sometimes it's helpful to switch off to to have a couple of dry brushes handy, and just kind of switch back and forth, because just in here there's a little bit of thinner that hasn't quite dried enough, and so it makes it a little bit more. It's not quite sitting where I want it to, but it's just, some of it you might actually do. If you you might want to let it sit for a little bit longer. Sometimes you kind of scrub. Ideally, for me, the drier it is, the better. When you're doing this kind of thing, but you can kind of see this one, especially because there's so many ribs on that. You can see how it's kind of how this one's kind of sitting. That doesn't look very good at all. So basically, you kind of take it, run it along, just run the paper towel along the surface, and it leaves a lot in the ribs. But again, what I'm doing here now is just taking the dryer brush and trying to just smooth out that pigment a little bit, get rid of the kind of brushy look and the tide marks. And yet it still leaves kind of a staining that looks a little bit more a little bit more realistic. So again, on the other side here, again, this doesn't look very good, so we just do that, and I usually like to make sure that the last stroke is always a downward one. If I have to scrub it all, just make sure that you just kind of bring it down. There we go. The top here, I can see that there's still too much thinner up top here, and because I didn't let it dry quite enough, when I just did that, it sucked out most of the thinner that I was planning on using. So, but at the same time, you just kind of go with what you've got. So that one I've this one I didn't use the brush with. It's getting a little bit more. This brush is a little too wet now. So I'm just gonna clean that a little bit and then just now. Of course, some of you are offering all kinds of chat. Let's see. Yeah, someone said, "Can I zoom the camera in a little bit?" Is that a little bit better? Okay, so I've got to just make sure that it's in the square here. But you can. I'm not sure how much you can necessarily see on the live chat here. But what I'm trying to do is any sort of line or kind of what I call a tide mark here is what I'm trying to get rid of, while it's at the same time leaving a lot of the pigment, leaving the pigment more or less around the ribs of it. Some of this works better. You know, this one, as you can see, this one actually I almost don't need to do very much at all. It actually worked quite well, because you can actually see some of the detail on this. And really, that's all you're necessarily trying to do. Now, you know, I mean, I'll take it and just do a general light brush with the brush, and then we have this intermodal container. And again, this one you can see where some of the pigment is kind of collected in the middle, just a little bit too much. And so what I'm just doing here is helping it move down a little bit more. And because this one's been sitting for a little bit longer, you know, it seems to be doing almost exactly what I want it to do. So I'm just going to do a kind of a grind along this, and then come back down. Some more downward strokes. And then I'm just hoping everybody can see this. And my eyes are on the model, not necessarily on what the camera's getting. So this one, I'm just going to take a little bit of the paper towel kind of catch some of that excess. And come back again. This brush is totally dry. There's no thinner on it, short of what it is actually picking up on the model itself. All right. All right. So there we go. I'm going to just zoom this back out a little bit. Now, Robert, you were asking about could I use a hairdryer? Yes, but my daughter would kill me if I actually brought it downstairs. So I suppose that's a kind of a short answer. So anyway, so. Here's, like, this is an example. I'm going to be perfectly honest. These aren't going to win any weathering awards. Like, you know, you're not. This is not going to win any sort of weathering contest. But what it will do is, because it blends into the background, people aren't necessarily going to be looking at this. They're going to be focusing on more the centerpiece models that you have. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention that I probably should have, and a method that I've used that I actually employed tonight, is one of the things when you're doing a lot of cars is what you want to do is you want to line up and do a lot, like you want to line them up and you do a process where you're not just weathering one car and then finishing it. What you're actually doing is you're doing one step across several cars, anywhere from five to 10 at a time, and then like finishing that step across it. And by the time you get to the end of the first one, you can come back and start doing the next step across the next one. So and it's basically it's a type of assembly line painting or assembly line weathering. Um, and so yes, Grain Express. That's exactly it. When these are rolling by, you're not really paying a lot of attention to the detail. In fact, particularly with sea cans, as they seem to be called, uh, there usually is not a lot of graffiti on the containers themselves. It's more on the actual well cars. And that's where the more heavy weathering is going to be. Now, that having been said, one of the things that I haven't covered here is that, say for example, like Gary, if you've got a whole lot of cars, um, what you can do is you can actually break it down into groups, sort of like a ratio. Say you've got 10 cars, and um, and generally what you do is you do this type of mass weathering on probably 7 of them. You do a little bit more on 2 of them, and then one of them you do a much higher detailed one. Good evening, Ron. The thanks for tuning in. And again, congratulations on the Chiefs win. So, can everybody here say "Go Chiefs"? They have the Chiefs actually have a similar color scheme to the Calgary Stampeders. So, I think we're okay. But anyway, coming back to this, these are not going to win any sort of awards. I'm still looking at that, going, I need to let this particular one dry a little bit more and massage it. The one thing that you have an advantage of when you're not doing a live stream is you actually have time. When I did the sample one here, when I did this particular one as a speed weathering, is I did the wash and I let it sit, and I set a timer for 20 minutes and let it sit for 20 minutes upside down. And then I came back to it, flipped it back the other way, because I had used way more thinner on the surface of this one. So probably you need to let them sit for at least 10 to 15 minutes on one side, turn them over, and then you come back and do the brush massaging. And so but as you can see, but this here we're just about at the hour, and the only thing that I would do for these cars at this point, I am going to come back and just massage them a little bit, because some of these you can let's get this to focus on, that you can see still some of the brush marks there that I need to let the paint dry just a little bit more. But keep in mind, if you're doing 20 of these at a time, you could bang these out in an hour using this method, and that by the time you get to the last one done, then you can start on the next step of the other ones. But basically, you apply the wash, you let it dry, you dry upside down, you flip them over, let them dry for a little while longer, come back with both paper towel and with a brush, and just massage it out. Now, the thing is, you can use larger brushes than what I've been using, because this is about the size of the brush that I've been using. It's about that large relative to the model, but I do have some other ones, especially if you're working on larger scales like HO or O scale. You'd want to kind of be able to work with that. So So yes, I mean, I think one of the things that yes, this is one way to do a lot of cars in an hour. Now, of course, the one thing is this is just a one step. The more steps you add, the longer it takes. So I have not done anything in the way of chipping. Um, I don't have time to do it, but I have my typical rust color right here, Mornfang brown, and I've got some sponges, and I've got the sponges here, and I could do a light bit of chipping on these. Now, you really want to be careful. You don't want to overdo it because chipping can easily be overdone. And you don't want the background cars to have too much in that way. I'd probably just do some around the corners, and probably what I do for some of the chipping here is maybe I would probably pull say three out of this group of six, do some chipping on that, and leave the other ones. The one thing that I've also not done here is just how to do quick fades. And you can do fades with oils in a similar way. Just what I would suggest using is either zinc white or what's called a soft mixing white rather than a titanium white. And you can actually kind of create a slurry and put it across the model, let it dry, and basically try and buff it out. And that'll create a fading effect. But if you're going to do that, you should probably do that first, then do the wash as you've seen me demonstrate tonight. And between those layers, make sure that there's a satin coat between them. So that's certainly another way to do it. So with that, I realize I am competing with the State of the Union address, at least in the States. It's not broadcast up here, but I just wanted to see: are there any other questions that you might have? I need to make sure that I just want to make sure that I didn't miss any super chats or any sort of because I've got the whistle, so I didn't get it. So I had a super sticker and a super chat, and which I'm quite grateful for. And so again, thank you very much for that. I'm just trying to bring up my proper windows here again. So, and just paying attention to it. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to get into politics because I know we have Republicans, Democrats, and in this feed right now. Can guarantee it. And I'm Canadian. I'm not part of either of those parties, and Canada is governed by the Liberal Party of Canada, to give you an idea. So there we go. That's all I'm going to say about politics tonight. So that kind of, and then we can go from there. So, do we have any more questions in terms of mass weathering, like in terms of various experiences? This was something very specifically that Gary Fish. Gary, I don't know if you're still watching there. If you can stick up your hand and just wave. Out there, because you're the one who kind of got the ball rolling here, and just want to make sure that you get the due, because Gary emailed me and said, the techniques are great, but I don't have time to spend enough on that. John, thank you very much. We got another super chat. There we go. Thank you, and. Really glad to do it. If you haven't already hit the like button, please do. Now, the truth is, what I've shown you tonight, in some respects, this deserves its own video, because I'm looking at this particular one here. You can see it. It's still kind of a little mushy on the side there, and so that probably when I'm done, I'm going to be doing do that with that. I just saw a question come up. Grain Express. I'm going to answer your question in a second, but I'm just coming back here, and I'm sort of massaging out. This is why I like working with oil paints so much, is because they you can manipulate them long past. Like if I did this with acrylic paints, um, I'd be hooped. That it would look like this, and I wouldn't get any chance to kind of come back and manipulate it again. And for this one in particular, um, whoops, I'm just gonna reach. Uh, and yes, I am doing this on a cooking rack because I was having them dry upside down. But see, for example, on this one, I'm not as fond of it. That I can actually take a little bit of just a little bit of thinner, and kind of come across and brush out some of those effects. Now, it does mean that I have to let it dry a little bit longer, but that kind of gives you an idea of how forgiving oil paints can really be. So I mean, you can modify it and change it just as you go. So, mind you, I will say have a look at the end of this. Oh, come on, focus. I'm gonna try and let this focus, and I'm not succeeding. And yeah, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not gonna work. All right, so I'm gonna put it down here, and let's try and zoom in and see if it's gonna catch here a little bit. Well, oh, that's a little bit better. But you can see how it makes all that detail stand out, and that's really what you're trying to do. I've my sort of philosophy when it comes to actually doing weathering. If there was one step, if you only had to do weathering in one step, for me, the most important thing is actually doing a detail wash of some sort, whether it's a pin wash or a general wash like this that you kind of rub away. That is the one thing that actually creates the illusion of volume more so than any other type of weathering. So, in terms of a tip for speed weathering, yeah, certainly try that out. So anyway, it is 7 minutes after 7 here in Calgary. I had forgotten to ask how everybody's weather was. Today was, I think we got down to about minus 15 Celsius today. Tomorrow we have, Calgary gets what are they called Chinooks, where we have these wild swings in temperature. So we're going to be above freezing tomorrow and probably for the next week. 3 weeks ago, actually not about 2.5 weeks ago, we were down in the minus 35 range. So it was really, really, really cold. So the yeah, and of course, by the way, if I'm presuming that when you post your temperature and you don't put a little C behind it, that you're posting in Fahrenheit. Uh, Oddly enough, Fahrenheit is one of the temperature things that being raised on the metric system, we do most of our measurements are done in inches and feet, but temperature we're entirely metric, and I have a difficult time thinking in Fahrenheit. So and so that means I have to translate for you when I'm talking about certain things. So anyway, oh, and far south in Mississippi as you can go. Possum Bayou. I think given your nickname, that would certainly track. So yes, our Canadians were full of the devil up here, with our odd metric system, but the but anyway, I think at this point, I'm certainly willing to answer any more questions, and I just want to see before I close off, is there anything that I haven't answered tonight that you have a question for? Two ways to do that: quickly post something within the next 5 minutes, and I'll try to answer that. Or if you go to the About section on my YouTube page, you can contact me through there. Gary, I'm not sure if that's where you contact how you ended up with when you contacted me with the email, but I think that's how you did it, and that's the great way to talk about it. Oh, right, Grain Express. Yes, you did ask about can you spray a wash through an airbrush. The answer is yes, you can. Um, where I am here, it's not practical. The other thing is, I would do it if you have a spray booth. I don't. And times that I have actually sprayed uh, an oil-based thing through my airbrush, I've taken a deep breath, had something over my face, and just did it in small amounts. But yes, in fact, uh, the Robin from Switzerland, he's probably sleeping right now. Uh, Actually showed me a couple of techniques of how an oil wash spray through an airbrush can work, and we've been kind of talking about some of those things. So yes, Grain Express, yes, you can do it. The only thing is because you're putting out in such a fine mist, it will cover nicely. It may dry faster. Because of course just the actual air itself can do that. So your drying times may vary a little bit. So yeah, and Matt Armstrong. So good to see you, Matt. I knew we were going to be starting a little late for you, so or a little early for you from getting home from work. So good to see you. But yes, what Matt says, and but yes, you can spray them. Generally, when you're working with, you want to try and keep, especially doing washes like this, keep it thin, especially like oil based washes. Just again, it's better to kind of go too thin and then come back than to kind of go too thick. But the real advantage of working with oil paints is that you can come back and manipulate them further. That's a luxury you don't have with doing acrylics. It's one of the reasons why I didn't bring up acrylic washes today. You can do that, but you got to be much more careful with them. And if you're mass weathering, you need something that looks good, quick, and that you can fix along the way. Whereas if you do acrylic washes, now, like, for example, let's go back to my. I just realized something all along the way. My light was slowly losing its intensity, and that's because the battery in my light was diminishing, and it was diminishing at a rate that I didn't realize that, and it was making it actually harder to see. So anyway, so good to know for next time. I just swapped out the battery, so again you can kind of see this, but for example, I use acrylic washes of all types on this Warhammer 40,000 orc. And when you're working with something like this, that acrylic washes are really good. When you're working with something like rail cars, where you have broad surfaces, you really need to use something that more like oils. And because the detail's a lot finer, it's not as thick. It's better to go with this way. Yes, acrylic washes are not as beginner friendly, and to be honest, I'm not a big fan of the Vallejo washes. If my suggestion is, frankly, the best acrylic washes in the business are from Games Workshop, hands down. They really are good. Now they're referred to in their line as shades. They don't call them washes, they call them shades, but that's effectively what they are. So anyway, I just realized I need to kind of bring this up. Okay, so with that, just if you have any other questions, just let me go. Let me know. My son's bedtime is coming up very soon, so I've got to deal with that. Again, thank you to John, to Brandon, and Possum Bayou for your super chats. Your super chats or Possum Bayou for your super sticker, and again, Will, you actually you did ask a good question in terms of the oil paints. Do I put the media on paper? Sometimes I put them on cardboard. Particularly if I'm using a Winsor Newton one like this, yes, put it on a bit of cardboard and it'll drain out the linseed oil. One of the things that I find with the Abteilung, they're less oily right out of the tube. So if you're using Starship Filth, you can pretty much use it right out of there. Especially if you're doing a wash, that doesn't matter nearly as much. It's if you're doing different types of effects like streaks and things like that. Yeah, you actually want to get it drain some of that linseed oil. Usually, a small piece of cardboard is really good for that. Um, so we can go from there. So yeah, and as you can see, the I have a number of containers, and I've got some well cars downstairs that I'll be able to put these in. But as you can see, this was a process. It didn't take me very long at all. I've done a whole lot more talking than I have painting. And so what I will do next with these ones is I'll give them I'll spray them down. Like, I'm going to make sure that I'm happy with how the wash is sitting. So I'm going to massage them out a little bit more. But once that's done, I'm going to spray them down with I'm just going to spray them down with a flat coat. And these ones are effectively done. Yes, Matt. You can add like for these the wheel streaks. You can certainly do that. That's really not all that hard to do. In fact, probably what I could do is I could use this. You could do this all with one color with the Starship Filth, and then just use a small brush to apply the streaks, and then soften it fairly quickly with a brush. But I would do that after I added a matte coat on top of that. But this is a way, as I said, in the time that we've talked here, you probably could have done. I've done 5 cars here. Yeah, there's 6 in the picture, but I've done 5. You could easily have done 20 in the same amount of time, and so that kind of gives you an idea of doing a lot quickly. As I said, the caveat is you're not going to win any awards with it. That's just part of it. But it does get it done, and it helps actually draw attention to the bigger pieces, the other weathering pieces that you're going to be working on. So, and yes, Grain Express. Some of this technique would also work well on structures. In fact, if you use a different color, such as an ivory or a white color, it's a good way to do bricks. It does, as long as the brick you get the brick color, it's a good way to do mortar. So with that. So, Blonde Modeler. In terms of pan pastels for mass weathering, I did think about. I've got some downstairs. I did think about that. They can be used well for doing some fading effects. Like, the one thing that I didn't do is I've got some containers downstairs. No, you don't notice most of these are light. I've got some containers downstairs that are blue, and a dark blue. This would work, but not as well. And so using a pan pastel to kind of fade, you can use them for fading. You could probably do a little bit of streaks, but again, that might take a little bit more time. You might be able to do, say, 5 in an hour if you were to kind of do that. But I think that's one to maybe save for a different live stream in terms of how to use some of the pan pastels for fading effects, and how to do that kind of quickly. So yeah, Blonde Modeler. I think you are certainly on something in terms of doing a mass, like in terms of bulk weathering. Yeah, I think you probably can. I'd need to sit down and kind of try it because I have more containers than this, and I have to tell you, these containers to do some test stuff on, really good, because I happen to have a member of our my club happens to have a number of them, and said, "Here, you can do with them what you want." So, thanks to one of the other Johns in the club that I'm a part of, there are 4 people named John in the Model Railroad Club that I'm a part of, and we all have nicknames. I'll let you guess what mine is at a later point. So. All right. With that, I think I'm going to get ready to sign off. Again, if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments section below, or alternatively, you can also get the chance to you can email me, or you can check out the Facebook page. The other thing is, if you want the Starship Filth oil paint, in down below, there's a link to my Amazon page and a direct link to this particular Starship Filth oil from Absalom 502. You can click on that and buy it from Amazon if you can't find it anywhere else. And so that's my suggestion in terms of a way to go. Other ways to contact me, if you have any other questions, by all means, I'd love to hear from them, and we can plan out our next live stream. So again, thank you very much, and good night, everybody, and good luck, and may you keep on track. I'm just going to put the overlay on, and you can chat for a little bit as I'm going out, and if you have any other questions. But I'm going to do this and shut the audio off. So have a good night, everybody.